going to interview an amazing Ashtanga Vinyasa yoga teacher. Follow me to discover who he is. Hello everybody, welcome to Asana Lab. I'm here in this beautiful place, Yoga and Salento. You check for the info in the description of this video. We are here with an amazing and very experienced teacher, Laruga Glaser. She doesn't need presentation, but I studied a little bit about the internet, about you, and I know that you're from United States, and you now are based in Sweden. And very important thing that you approached on yoga when you were very young. So the first question is, what kind of yoga did you approach at the beginning? It was Ashtanga yoga. You were straight in Ashtanga yoga or no?
No, not necessarily. I started kind of a spiritual or philosophical exploration when I was like in my adolescent years. So before I found like the practice of yoga, I was into reading about the philosophy, like spiritual philosophy or spiritual thought. And of course, through that, I came across yoga philosophy. And I remember coming across some of the Yoga Sutras, like, and when I was introduced to Ashtanga, it was really 8 limbs first.
Okay.
That's kind of, that was like, to me, very interesting. And then, of course, later, because it's like I would pick up that philosophy and study, and then, I would be leading a normal, like, teenage life.
Yeah.
And, but I did start to understand that there were like postures and yoga, and it was, springing up a little bit. It wasn't super popular at that time, at least where I was living. Where I grew up was in the Midwest of the United States. But one thing that was interesting, I started to get into asana practice because I did understand through my own study of yoga that it could be very healing.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was having some back issues, and a lot of things weren't really helping. And then I kind of thought, oh, maybe I should try this yoga, and that's kind of how the journey began when it came to more practical types of things. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Good. So at certain point, you met Sri K. Patabi Joyce. You started with him, the late Patabi Joyce. I can understand, yeah? The last 10 or 15 years of the Patapi Joyce teachings, yeah? Or more?
I only practiced with Patabi Joyce for a very short time.
Okay.
And to me, he was, because I started, before I even went to Mysore, I was practicing for close to 10 years.
Okay.
And so he was always an inspirational figure. And I was lucky enough to have some time to practice under his guidance, but I really feel my true teacher always has been Sharatji, his grandson.
My next question is about this. Know your student, you said that about of Sharat Joyce is the grandson of Patabi Joyce.
Yeah.
And about this, what can you say about their method, actually also your method now? Yeah. Can you explain just the philosophy of the method, the Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga, or call it Ashtanga Yoga mostly?
I've been following the Ashtanga Yoga practice now for 23 years. I started in the United States, was practicing very consistently for close to 10 years before I went to Mysore, and I really took on Arsharat Joyce as my teacher, and I've returned, for the last 13 years. And I really try to honor and pass on what I've learned, from the teachings of my teacher, and to remain clear about
Yeah.
that. And I don't change things. I teach what I was taught. I
Yeah.
think it's important to keep that type of clarity. Um, but there's much more flexibility in the practice than many people realize. But one thing that I often tell students of the practice, I find it's important to know the rules before you break them. Sometimes
Yeah,
we do have to
yeah, I
break
agree.
rules,
I
right?
agree. I agree. It's a beautiful way to maintain a tradition,
Yeah.
but yes, I agree with you. You have to know the rules before break it. Yeah,
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 there's something I think becoming even having a little bit of a restriction, being very strict in the beginning. I think in those integral years, really understanding the network of the method, and then we can entertain, breaking a few rules, quote
yeah, yeah,
unquote. Not that someone's going to come and throw us into jail or something, or that's not. It's not like a detrimental thing, but I think it is something that the method is kind of there to really ground and center us, and also to obtain this really deep connection inwardly. And I think once that bridge is made, we can widen the scope a
yeah,
bit,
yeah,
but it
yeah,
takes time. And I think too, it's so important to cultivate patience, and allow things to unfold and to really give time for the learning. Because even I'm always surprised, even though I've been practicing a long time, I'm always surprised how some things I've missed. And I'm like, how did I miss
hmm
that? And how did I not have that interworked in my practice? And
yeah,
so there's always new things that we're discovering that were always there. And sometimes it takes a while. We have to give time for that. So
yeah, yeah. Great, great. I agree. And so I know also that you are a traveling teacher, and I know that you travel a lot around the world.
mm.
Um, I'm curious about one thing. Um, how do you manage this kind of life with your daily practice?
Well, the thing about it is I do have a base. I do have a home, and I live in Stockholm,
Yeah.
Sweden. Um, and I did start a MISA program there, and I was pretty much transplanted there for a number of years. And prior to that, I didn't travel so much. I was very grounded in certain places where I was living, and I feel like you do need that foundation to begin with to feel that you can be adaptable in changing your environment on a consistent basis, like I had. I don't think it would have worked so easily if I would have done it like 2 years into teaching or 3 years into teaching. You know,
Yeah.
um, so prior to teaching, I had quite a few years of practice under my belt, and then teaching, very consistently in certain areas, and then from there, the it was never my goal to travel. It's just something that kind of organically started
Yeah.
to happen,
Yeah.
and I can't really say if I'll continue to do it for a long time or if I'll just kind of stay more grounded and centered. I'm kind of taking it year by year. But it is challenging.
Yeah.
But I find that the practice is so necessary to remain a sense of grounding and center in the travel. And, of course, it comes with challenges because sometimes you're in different climates. Sometimes you don't have control over what environment you're practicing in.
Yeah.
But the good news is I'm always traveling for yoga. So, finding a yoga studio to
Yeah.
practice
Yeah.
in is not that hard. Finding a yoga mat. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes I bring my yoga mat, but also sometimes people give me one to borrow, and that's not so
Yeah.
hard.
You find every time the right place. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I find that where I travel to, because I'm there to teach, people support that I do have time to practice, which is
Yeah.
nice. I have some students that try to maintain their practice with travel and work that's outside of, a
Uh
yoga
huh.
lifestyle. And I really admire those types of people too that can keep their practice because they're not, I'm traveling to places where yoga is very much supported.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are finding a balance where it may not be so much. So, yes, it has its challenges, but I feel like it's not as hard as what I've, you know,
Good.
experienced with some students of mine.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. So you you have a group of students that you follow constantly. when you're visited, or around the world, or both?
Um,
If you.
well, I am lucky enough to see familiar faces,
Mm,
throughout my travels, like people who've returned to retreats or workshops that I've conducted, which is always really nice. It's always great to see familiar
yeah,
faces and also to see the progress that people make between the time when I see them and when
yeah,
I don't. But also, I did start a Meister program in Stockholm, Sweden. Now, my boyfriend has taken more of the reins since I've been having more of an intense travel schedule.
yeah.
But I do pop in and still keep contact, from time to
Great,
time. Yeah.
great. Yeah, yeah. So about this, I'm with you in this retreat in Salento, and it's great. But I noticed one funny thing for me, and that's I am the only man in the shala.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
mostly women, um, and I noticed that also in the other retreat where I went with other teachers, or in my daily practice in the shala in Bologna where I live. And how, for you, what's your opinion about this?
um, yeah. So I have noticed an ebb and a flow when it comes to male practitioners because I feel like maybe 5 to 3 years ago, I felt like, especially in some of my travels, was seeing more men, and now I've seen it reduce a little bit.
Yeah,
And sometimes it does depend on where I'm teaching. So I've noticed in certain countries there seems to be a few more men than others. Um, and I'm really not sure what the answer is. I mean, it is interesting that in the past it was always mostly male
yes,
practitioners.
yes,
And I think there's a certain perception for men that it seems to be feminine, or it seems to be only about relaxation,
uh-huh.
or there's not, you know,
Yeah,
any type of
yeah.
like this.
Mostly when you say I practice yoga, is, oh no, it's so boring. You stay
Yeah,
just still and meditation. Yeah,
yeah. But I think in Ashtanga yoga, I think it can be very attractive for men because there is a lot of challenge
yeah,
and there's a lot of strength work, and there is a building of progress and potential over time. But, at the same time, men can also sit in that place of feeling internally aligned and calm and centered, which could be very helpful. So um, I hope that, more men start to maybe get more interested in it. But right now, there does seem to be more of a female presence
yeah,
in
yeah,
the room, which maybe would be a good thing. Maybe that would attract more men to come. There's a
yeah,
lot of females.
yeah. Why not?
But it's such a great, I find Ashtanga yoga is really great for men. And I think sometimes, again, there's that perception that it isn't challenging enough, that there's only a lot of sitting. But, we sit at the end and we take relaxation at the end after doing quite a bit of work. So,
Yeah, yeah. So thank you for this interview. It was beautiful to have you here. So guys, check for her retreats around the world. Follow Laruga, and don't forget, don't do yoga. Be yoga.
Shri Ram Jaya Jaya Jaya